Namaste and in Laquettes, and welcome to this episode of One World in a New World. I'm your host, Zen Benefiel, and as always, please do subscribe, like, share, comment. What you put in here, how you listen to it, how you reflect can affect not just your own life, but many others too, and it's well worth the time investment. Also, and speaking of time investments, please visit planetarycitizens.net and download your copy of Planetary Citizens Awakening the Heart of Humanity. It is a compilation and complementary uh, vision that goes with planetarycitizens.net, which takes the spiral dynamics model, breaks it into the co-creation wheel, and shows how we can create a holistic model that serves everyone in this new normal. So please do visit, like and share, subscribe, and let's have some fun together. Now, this week's guest is Christina, excuse me. Oh, by the way, one thing that you probably need to know is we've got 1.8 million views. So what I'm talking about isn't just a theory, right? We've got some traction. We've got viewers. You're one of them now. Thank you so much for being that. So Christina Olsen, she is a hypnosis expert and mindset coach. She rewires through trances for peak leadership and wealth. Now, she is a host of Remembering You podcast, which is really what all of this is about. It's remembering who you truly are. She's also a speaker on transformational change. She's a chief executive officer for Bright Soul LLC, and in that, she creates strategic partnerships, investments, and advisory strategic partnerships for future events that will absolutely change the world over time. She is an investor on the board of directors for the compensation committee for Notice Ninja, and I am really looking forward to this conversation with her. So don't go away. We'll be right back for a deep dive and another apocalyptic chat.
Explore the thoughtless-sphere. Embark on a life-changing journey of self-discovery. Embrace harmony with self, with others, with Earth. One world in a new world. Zen Benefiel skillfully ignites conversations, guiding guests to reveal personal journeys and perspectives. Listeners are inspired to seek knowledge and find wisdom in their own lives. Join this transformative journey as we navigate the depth of human experience.
Christina, it's so great to have you here. These introductions are always a pain in the butt, but it's so valuable to have people like you on the show because, as you know, being a hypnotist, we're bereft of those inner conversations. You help create them with others in the work that you do. How we bring those out and show that it's okay to bring these inner thoughts and feelings and concerns and even experiences out into the world so that we can get corroboration, validation, and maybe further understanding what they are because we hear ourselves talk about them. So this being an important factor, how did you begin to understand that there was more to this world than just what you were seeing in front of you and experiencing in the outer world? That there's a far deeper connection that each of us have.
Yeah. Well, Zen, first of all, thank you for sharing this time with me in this space. I appreciate it. It means a lot to me. Really, I have always loved to have freedom, and freedom's like my number one value ever since I was a little kid. And everything that I was told, these rules and guidelines and of society, I always questioned them, and it would just like really irritate my parents. Like, why can't I just be quiet and do what I was told instead of asking all these questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so for a while in my earlier years, I learned how to kind of disassociate and just play by the rules.
Which is
And
common,
yeah,
right? We all try, even though we're all weird in some way, or we think we are, we still try to fit in so that we're socially acceptable.
exactly. So I went through my life and I checked off what I call like the bullshit rules, right? All the boxes
Right.
that the world gives you. You know, you want to go and graduate from high school and have a lot of friends and go to prom, and you want to go to college and get your degree, you know, get straight A's, or as good of grades as you can,
Right.
and you know, do it all with a smile, be social. And you know, it was like, okay, so I thought that would make me happy, and I got my degree, I got a great job, and I was living on my own. Ended up like going through a lot of, we'll talk, I'm sure, more, some trials and tribulations. Um, and met my ex-husband, who I had my two children with, and we had a great house and all those things. And in like 2015, 16, after we had our second child, I was like, okay, so I've checked off all the bullshit boxes, and now what do I do with my life? I have a great job, I have two kids, I have the white picket fence, I've got two dogs, I got a husband. Now what? And I'm still
Right.
not happy.
You know,
And
that's a perfect point. And um, in my awakening, we spoke a little bit uh, prior to, and as a teenager, when I had my awakening and found that place of freedom, right, there were those constraints, and it wasn't until a conversation with a psychiatrist that my parents sent me to, who was just a godsend. I mean, he was outside the DSM-4 at the time. He didn't want to diagnose and treat. He wanted to listen and
mhm,
to truly help me understand what was going on with me, not try to put it off as some kind of symptomatic uh,
yep.
excursion, right? And because evidently he'd had his own, and he listened well enough that I had all of those key points that reference to spiritual awakening, which is what he said after the third visit. He says, you're not crazy. You've had a spiritual awakening. Why so young? I don't understand, because most people don't have it till their mid 40s, if they ever do,
Mhm.
which that's kind of the area thereabouts, at maybe late 30s, 40s, where you're empty nesting, you're corporate burnout, your transition change, all these kinds of things, midlife crisis, all of those kinds of things are happening, which generally facilitates a deep trauma event that has you give up and open yourself up to something more.
Right. Yep. And that's what happened. I actually went to, and I've not talked about this on any of my podcasts or anything, so this is new for anybody who follows me. I went to a psychic actually, and it took me almost like 6 year or 6 months to get into him. He's really
Hmm.
well known here in the Chicagoland area. Um, I think he's still practicing, but I went in and thinking, well, I don't know. I don't have anybody who died in my life that I was really close to, except for my parents and
Right.
or my
Yeah,
grandparents.
answers are always going to be clearer from the other side.
Yeah.
Mm,
So I was like, I don't know what I'm getting myself into, but I decided to do it anyways. And he told me, it was very eye-opening. He said to me, Christina, you've been doing a lot of work, and I see that you have your spirit guides very close to you. They're very grounded. And I was like, oh boy, which I had been doing a lot of like journaling and stuff and asking my spirit guides for help. So I was like, wow, this is really interesting. And he said, you can choose to, because I went with this, I had this whole issue with my husband and like my kids and being stuck in this box. And I didn't say
mhm.
it like that to him. He said, you can choose to either stay in this box and be unhappy, or I see a future where there's a lot of money, opportunity to help people and live your life's purpose. And this is your chance to decide to take it or not. And I was like, wow. After
Oh,
that,
no doubt.
yeah, after
Now,
that,
was that more corroboratory to your inner awareness about what was happening that you hadn't really had anybody to speak with about yet?
yes, yeah. It was and there was more to it, but
I'm
that was the
sure.
gist that was the gist of it. And it was mostly Yeah, I had
Yeah,
this
because those things
calling.
don't happen in a vacuum, right? There's as much as you step in with your willingness to show up in your best, that doesn't always mean it's going to work because
Right.
the other has to show up with a like frequency and willingness to navigate. And
And he wasn't gonna
unfortunately,
be there.
well, we're not taught how to do that. You know, we're kids raising kids,
Hmm.
right? And there's that unwillingness to be vulnerable, talk about the deep stuff. You know, my parents, your parents probably were in a generation that didn't talk about things. They were stalwart. They were, you know, man works, woman's in the home, you know, in America, and maybe the rest of the world too. That's a pattern that's developed over time that wasn't necessarily meant to be, but it was facilitated by the powers that be in how we were framed in mostly religious perspective,
Hmm. Yeah, that's
right? And that it's wrong. Oh, you can't get divorced. That's a sin.
right.
Well, you know, when you have two frequencies that are brought together that are incongruous or, you know, partially harmonic to begin with, if the rest of it doesn't work, mathematically, scientifically, how would that work out? Well, it's going to create disturbance and dissension,
Yeah,
right?
that's
That's
right.
just the natural order. So
Yeah.
we need to be more, or would you say that that natural order is something that we're kind of bereft of understanding too?
Yeah. Yes, I would say that. We yeah, I mean, that's pretty deep.
I'm not known to be shallow.
Okay, so if I
Yeah.
take it, yeah, I mean, yes. So I talk about a lot about this on our podcast, right? So like if I'm in a relationship and we just did this an episode on hurt people.
Yeah,
And
right.
so and that's why you can stay in those relationships and those cycles until one person pulls themselves out of it and they start vibrating at a higher level. And then I'd say 90, I keep saying this on the podcast, 99% of uh, people don't make it. The relationships don't make it because they just keep creating the disdain that you're talking about. It's
Right.
you're fighting two frequencies that just aren't coming together.
And there's an unwillingness to look at self first and establish the self love
Mhm.
necessary
Yeah,
that breaks those patterns.
that's right. Yeah, that's right. And so if one person's working on the self-love and realizes, that they're worth more, the other person will naturally just move out of their life because everything that we have in this world are just simply mirrors of what we have
Hmm.
going on in our inner world.
Now, is it a matter of worth or self worth? For sure, that's part of it. But we often think that worth equates to some kind of financial arrangement, and right, and not,
That's true.
and that's the evidence that it's working,
Yeah, that's
right?
yeah, yes, that's
However, that's not the core of why you do that, right? It's the navigation into a state of harmony with
hmm
each other, which creates the happiness, the joy, the fulfillment. And yet, that reluctance to step back and look at oneself and not be defensive is a first step, which is hard to do because we're taught to defend ourselves, right?
Yep.
So
Mhm.
how? Let's go. Let's turn the pages back a little bit. Go back into the Wayback Machine, and we'll ask Peabody to enjoy or to join us. Right, Bullwinkle reference. Um, so in this, as you were growing up and feeling that freedom, and what kinds of things were happening as a child that gave you more awareness that, okay, I'm seeing some things that don't feel right, and I know there's something better, and I see this. How can I get there?
So my mom and dad were really young when they had me, and they gave us a great life for, I love them very much.
Hmm.
And there was a lot of being, and when early on in my life, a lot of being handed off to grandparents, and both sides of my family were very Catholic, very religious. And I was always like, but I don't understand why the priest can't get married. Like and my grandma was like, well, it's because they're giving themselves up for love and to God and like all these things. And I was like, I don't understand it. And so my
Yeah,
grandma,
where did that rule come in? I don't ever remember Jesus ever saying anything about that, and that's what the whole religion is designed after, was his teachings.
yes. And so every time I would ask questions, I would kind of get the standard, religious answers. And I just didn't really believe. And so I was kind of like, I felt like an outcast, I guess you
Mm-hmm.
could say. And so
Sure.
my grandma would take us to, or take me to these prayer groups. And I one time was, I don't know what was going on with me. I was probably like 8 years old. And I swear to you, I saw the Virgin Mary. And she was like, you've got to love yourself. And I was
I got to pause for just a second. The vibration of that energy that came through just produced a line of disturbance in the video. I don't know if you saw that. I did on my side. I just find that those are the kinds of synchronicities we were talking about earlier, that evidence, right, in the electronic world of things actually connecting. Be that as it may, you can see it or not, or, you know, I'm not saying believe it, it's true. I'm saying that's just interesting.
yeah, it is just interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that's kind of when I woke up and I told my grandma, I said, I saw the Virgin Mary, and she said, wow, that's awesome. And she was a very religious person, so she thought like I had like a special, like I was special. And then
Hmm.
everybody she told, they were like, she's making that up because she wants, your attention. And
Right.
so,
Well, isn't that strange? You know, you've had that. I'm sure you probably had other visitations as well. I've had them. I've had Jesus show up and ask to speak through me to a group of people. They saw him, but telling the story, the first thing that most Christians do is they want to destroy and disturb and deviate from the experience. Our experience is our only truth, right?
right.
When we sharing that with others, then if they don't accept it, that's okay. But why do you have to make us out to be liars when we're not?
Yeah, that's right. And how do you know? Because they're what they're doing is they're just being very closed-minded.
Sure. And
Ask the
hearted.
Yeah, and ask the question to yourself, what is it about this situation that I want to shut down? And what is it within me that won't accept what somebody else is saying, and ask those questions because
That point right there is like, right. So we are one with each other, and there's something, the self love issue, right? There's something in myself that's unable to accept that truth completely because I still feel defensive about it.
right, that's correct. And so you have to work through that. And that's what I am here to teach people is how do you ask yourself the right questions to just shift your belief system
Hmm.
just a little bit so that you can open your mind and realize that your kid, the people closest to you, your family, your child, your siblings, your parents, what is it about them that's bothering you? And what do you need to address inside of you? And then how do you shift your perspective just incrementally every day and give that self-love to yourself and that worthiness of being loved? And that's what I'm talking about when I say worthiness. I'm not talking about like you're worthy to get $18 million or something, like you're
Sure,
worthy to
sure.
give
Well, the
yourself love.
core, maybe you'll corroborate this, the core that seems to be present in each of us when we peel back all the layers is simply to love and be loved.
Hmm. That's right. And we lose that in our everyday society. We choose to watch fear-based news, read fear-based articles. We send our kids to basically jails that they have to stay within four walls in a certain amount of time. They're told when they can move from one place to another. I mean, the majority of us do because we don't have unlimited funds and we have to send our kids to public school. And so
Right.
that's what we're learning. This is how we're raising our kids. And there's, yeah, a lot of the public schools can say, I've done, we've done a lot. There's no bullying campaigns and all this stuff. But when you're anti-bullying, how about your,
You're still fighting bullying. Bullying is
yeah,
still the issue.
exactly. And what does it sound when you say you're anti-bullying versus you're pro-kindness and love?
Right.
And it's a totally different conversation and it's a different feeling when you actually say that. And so there's a
Absolutely.
lot of
And
things.
American schools especially have been programming kids in boxes to meet test scores, right?
Hmm.
Rather than give the creative, innovative, critical thinking support of their own natural abilities. Now, I have to say um, and this is an interesting reflectory point that I've found. I uh, met and married what feels like uh, and I know my twin flame, right? And a lot of people go, "What the hell is that?" Well, just trust me; it's a very deeply connected soul that
Hmm.
we sense and feel. So she was born and raised in Leningrad, USSR, and went through their entire system. She was analyzed as a 5-year-old by an educator, and they chose that, okay, you've got the skill set, the aptitude, and the physicality for either being a pianist or a gymnast. Which would you like? And she chose piano. So then what happened is she got this robust education around becoming a piano pedagogue, and she graduated from Mussorgsky College, which is one of the top music schools in the world. Now, that's how they treated in the USSR, right? Which
Hmm.
is this ultimate enemy of the state.
Hmm.
But they treat their children that, and it may not be the best. There may be some nuances in there. However, that difference showed up in how competitive and how the rest of the world saw Russia as being these elite athletes, elite mathematicians, philosophers, scientists, right? Well, that's something that America needs to take and look at and reflect on and change so that we can support our children rather than seeing them all drugged and disturbed with the ADHD, the neurodiversity, the choices of who or what they want to be, and or the lack of them, and the lack of support that they have in that. Again, kids raising kids. We haven't
Yeah.
grown out of that state of being because we're stuck in it because of the programming we get.
Well, and that's why we started Remember You. It's one voice on top of one voice to start to wake people up, right? That's why you're doing what you're doing. Wake
Mm-hmm.
people up, realize that we don't have to follow the same structures that we followed for the last 100 years.
Yeah, we
When you
don't know what
start,
the new ones will be yet.
no, but you
And
start
that's this period
changing.
that we're in, right? It seems like all these fragmented kind of things that we're wondering, and yet it's part of that process of chaos to order. And the chaos holds the patterns that we're seeking. We just don't see them yet.
Yeah, and that's where I've started this whole campaign on my social media the last like 3 weeks is chaos to calm. It's it's really going from this chaotic place to a more calm, accepting, loving space. And
Hmm.
as we all start to get on that vibration and that wave, things are going to start to change. We don't have to know the how. We just have to
We'll figure it
realize,
out. That's the
yeah.
collaboration part of it, right?
Hmm.
I have a series right now on my newsletter on LinkedIn. It's called Zenscapes Mindful Futures. And this series is about looking at our social platforms and what's happening and how we can elevate them on the rungs of the spiral dynamics scale,
Hmm.
right? And collectively, we can do this. We just need to present and act, right? It's our behavior that's controlling everything.
Well, and
So if we
actually,
behave, right?
I would love to understand from your perspective. So, like the spiral dynamics, right?
Yeah.
When you're looking at like a blue level, right? Like somebody who just likes to live within the rules and the regulations the society gives you, right? How, what is your perspective on how do you get people to go up the rings quicker? Because my understanding is it takes something within them to change something. Nothing that they're going to hear you or I say will impact
It's
them.
a choice that needs to be made, but and here there's a difference. We're all born, I believe, with a purpose. All right, if we look at the divine plan and we could accept that it's order and the universe is one, then all of us are strands in it. We're those divine threads, right? Like the Vedanic philosophy, we're all divine threads connected to source, capable of God consciousness. That means working in harmony with each other
Yep.
and the universe, nature. So in that process, there's this choice that comes up. Do I have a dream? It's funny, I started my coaching consulting business back in 1988 with the name of Be the Dream, not realizing how that would ultimately affect things, right? And then we've gone through our transformations as well. So being able to see that, to look for, okay, where does where does my energy want to flow? What am I passionate toward? How, what are my natural proclivities, right? Where do I resonate most with, and what other companies might be in that realm, or what other individuals, or what do I have at my disposal that I can create my own gig with and
Hmm.
get help from others, coaches like me that's been there, done that, that's part of what we do as part of this process. So being able to step into that, having the confidence to do it first of all, or at least the vulnerability, and to drop the fear and just say, okay, I don't know, but I'm going to step into it and see what happens. The universe supports that. Every book that you will ever read about finding commitment and stepping into that, the universe supports, right?
Hmm.
You'll have synchronicities, you'll have breadcrumbs, right, that show up in front of you, subtle ones usually. You don't want to get the cosmic two before, because that means you've been doing the same thing over and over again, like Einstein says. That's the definition of insanity.
Yep.
So by making that change to step out of the patterns, or at least
Hmm.
recognize them to begin with, and ask for a way out, the universe will surprise
Yeah.
you with it. Like you were saying, you ask the right questions. Universal law dictates that you will get the answers. They may not be the ones you want, but they'll be the ones that are best for you.
Yeah, and you have to have an open mind to accept them.
Right. Did that explain because each
Yes.
of these levels in the spiral dynamics, and spiral dynamics, for those of you who aren't aware, it's originally called the Beck-Graves model, in that they did 40 years of research and looked at how populations, how society reflects these different layers of behavior, openness, mindfulness, vulnerability, unification factors, all of these kinds of things. And they put it in a scale, and it goes from the lowest, which is war, to the highest, which is unity consciousness and working as one, which is where the natural progression of our own evolutionary process is headed. The universe is not cacophonic, it's not in entropy, it's always refining itself. Well, if we can look at that through our own eyes and see, oh, we're constantly being refined. Well,
Hmm.
what's that mean? How do we step into that and not be afraid? Because it's going to be a jostling, as we're removing those things that are discordant within us and discovering those beliefs that we've held that don't belong.
That's right.
So
And if we go back to our school system, if we redesigned it a little bit more around, there's the 12 laws of the universe, but I like to call them the 13 codes of the universe because
I love that number, right?
I do believe that, the number one is that everything that we're living in is mentalism. So we are a mind, God is a mind that has created us. And then every single situation he's figured out and he knows what's going to happen. It's what we choose. That's why he gave us free will. And that's why this video game that we're in is fun. And so then if you can learn that mentalism piece, then you can understand a lot more of all the different laws to come.
Right. And when you take that's a very simple thing, and the complexity is this intelligence, this infinite intelligence that we're all connected to, has far more capacity. And in the formless state, what's going to happen? Well, you got to create forms in order to experience your own creation. And so there's this multiplicity of opportunities, and the joy of such a rich experience across the board, even though it seems like there's this polarity involved. When you look at it from a one perspective, it's circular, it spirals, it's all part of the same.
Yeah. Well, that's what, so one of the laws that I'm really into right now is the law or the code of polarity, right?
Mm.
So you think of temperature. This is the easiest way that I've talked to my kids about this. Temperature, like when you say something's hot and something's cold, right? You're basically talking about temperature. You
Mm-hmm.
are that, and you either have cold or you have hot. Some people love it really cold temperature. Some people love it really hot.
According to
Just
the movie, some like it hot.
yeah, exactly. And this life is about coming into the balance, into the middle, and realizing when you're getting too cold or too hot and pulling yourself back into the middle balance. And the closer that we can come in middle and balance is the closer that we can become in more harmony together,
Mm-hmm.
is the way I look at it. And it's a
Right.
lot of times this, I talk about this a lot when you're looking at politics, it's the same thing. And I know whatever, everybody gets all upset about politics, but you go all the way to the right or all the way to the left, you have this huge polarity, but you're still talking about politics. So
Right.
ask
Well,
yourself
the
the
thing about
question.
politics, pardon me for the interruption, but
Yeah.
politics are things that death and taxes and politics, right? We're not supposed to talk about them. People don't want to get involved in politics because they don't want to take responsibility. They
Yeah,
want to
that's
put it on
true.
somebody else and then complain or try and push or pull, when the reality is it's personal responsibilities that we each have to step up and live.
Yeah. Yeah. And we give our power, and this is another thing that I'm really passionate about, is like stop giving your power to somebody else. You have your power within you.
Unless they've
Take your
proven that they're ethically and morally capable of managing it.
yeah. And even then, I don't know. I'm not
Yeah.
100% sure.
Well,
Um,
and that's still part of how we learn to get along together, and it's the system that's been created in order for world powers to navigate as well.
mhm,
Um, Now, you mentioned the school system. I taught high school for a number of years, special ed, regular ed, charter schools. I designed multiple intelligence learning centers for one school that were just amazing. And then at the end of that, for my second degree in organizational management, I wrote a business plan for a model school. And what I found, it was a holistic school. Well, the holism is about five relationships: body, mind, spirit, planet, cosmos. As we get older, we understand these five relationships are imperative to be aware of.
mhm.
So, how can we share that with the newer generations so that they get a leg up for their future and understanding a more complete picture, is like the Russians, right? Here's the skill set. Now we've got the system to support that. How can we put you into that in the best place for you to find your own success, fulfillment, and service to the world?
Well, I was in a pretty intense meditation and I heard, I want to say it was like a God spirit come down to me and said, I was asking, what is my purpose now that I sold my company and I don't know what to do? And the voice said, save the children. And I was like, what the hell does that mean? Was it save my children? What was it, you know? And so for like 6 months, I went on this meditation journey and ended up getting my hypnosis license. I went actually down the path you went, and I was thinking, oh, I have to open up this school and like help all these kids. And I started interviewing people who are in the space that you and I are in,
Hmm.
and they said, you can't save the children. You can't do this school. There's too many other there's too much out there already, and it's not working because the parents don't align with it. You first have to save the parents before you can save the
Well,
children.
yeah, they're dualism, right? So you've got that dual approach, and
Uh,
yes, that's true. However, as you found, I'm sure maybe this would be better posed as a question. Have you found a way to connect a logic path that's explicable to the point where it resonates in the truth of it so that it's undeniable with the parents? Now, that doesn't mean they can do anything about it. It just means that it makes sense to them.
have I personally?
Yeah.
I'm practicing it with my own kids, right?
Okay.
So I
Well, you got
decided.
to learn it first before you can share it, right?
That's right. So I went back to school. I have a psychology background and I got my license in hypnosis, and I have been practicing it with my own kids, right? Of understanding whatever's going on inside of me is just mirroring out to them. And how do I help them understand the same thing when they're out
Right.
to the outside world?
Funny you mentioned that. I had a practice marriage, really four kids, and by the time I taught high school, they were that age, and they were we were divorced in '88, so they moved back to Indiana, and I'm living in Phoenix. So the only way that I have to keep up with them is to be around kids of their same age. And so I just got an MBA, and I thought, okay, I'm going to get a teaching cert and see what I can do with that to be helpful and learn and be in touch. And wow, um, amazing journey that is. And I'm just as yours. Uh, but that whole thing about being present and connected, even at a distance, right? You're still attempting to be connected and understanding of what's going through so that when that time does come that you're able to have a conversation, you're better prepared.
Yes. Yeah, it's 100%. I mean, I don't, unfortunately, fortunately, whatever you want to say, either way, you can look at it as a gift. You know, my husband and or my ex-husband and I are obviously divorced, so we share custody, and so I'm the same way. I don't get to spend 100% of my time with my kids. So then when I do have them or I'm around other people's kids, I instill the same values, talk about the same things, and utilize that time preciously.
Sure. Well, and the fact is, when you dissociate, right, you don't completely dissociate. You just agree that, okay, there's a love here. It began, and it's not as full as what we thought it might be, but that doesn't mean that we can't have, like that, um, what is it, the Gantt chart or the one with the three circles that's got the centerpiece, right?
Oh
That
yeah,
they're all
yeah,
overlapping,
yeah,
right? So there's these
overlap.
factors, and then there's that core in the center.
Hmm.
So that all the tangential relationships outside of that, for instance, focusing on your kids,
Right.
that you agree that, okay, there's a working relationship here that still needs to continue. You can still be friends. That doesn't mean you're capable of cohabitating.
It's so true. I mean, it's what I guess modern day people say, hey, we co-parent really well or
Right.
whatever you want to say. But yeah, it's finding that middle ground of realizing that, hey, it didn't work out, but as you grow, you can still be in that middle ground and find that balance to have something where you can stay emotionally strong and intact for your kids so that they become better people, right?
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I mean, I guess going back to the whole school thing, I did not start my own school, but I do
I
homeschool.
never, it was, thank you for thinking I did. it didn't happen. It was still, I took it to, because it was for at-risk kids. That's what
Okay.
I was focusing on. So I took the model to the Arizona State Child Protective
Yeah.
Services Director of Education. And he said, Zen, I love it, but you're light years ahead of us. I don't know if we'll ever get there. So that was a rude awakening because I have all these loving, idealistic possibilities that can happen. And the reality is, it's just not time yet.
Right. Yeah. 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 It's not time yet, but it's getting there.
Yeah. Well,
It's,
that was 2002.
so we're making progress.
Yes, we are.
I actually was hell bent on homeschooling my kids. And so after that, I was like, all right, well, if I can't start my own school right now, then I'm going to do my own school with my
Hmm.
kids.
Was
So
it
I
hell
gave
bent or heaven bent?
heaven bent, whatever, I don't know. Yeah, heaven, that's much
Interesting
better.
how, words come out. We don't, it's just those kinds of things, right?
Yeah, it was programmed into me. So you're right, it's
Yeah.
heaven.
Yeah.
Um,
It's all
and so,
beautiful.
I mean, it's both made by God. So, um, yeah, so I gave both my kids the opportunity to be homeschooled, and my older son actually was the one who took the opportunity this year. And we have learned so much in what, less than 2 months, 3 months with him being home. He has really blossomed and taken control of his own education. And he right now would be a junior in high school, and everybody thought he was crazy for wanting to do this, but he's reading for English. I gave him um all my favorite books. So the Body Keeps Score he's currently reading. He read The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer, one of my absolute favorites,
Oh,
which I
yeah. Awesome
think
book.
everybody should read. And he came to me and he said, Mom, a few of my friends are taking psychology classes right now. And we had this conversation when we were at the basketball court the other day. And he's like, dude, they're like, how do you know all this stuff? And he's like, my mom's making me read these books and it's like eye-opening. He goes, I don't really have that like roommate in the head. I just make a decision and move on with it. And I don't think a lot about it. But he goes, you guys, like everybody, now I know how people act and like why, and he's explaining it all to them. And they're like, wow, can we be homeschooled by your mom?
Well, and there's a perfect example. You take the child out of this programmed environment, which they don't have much wiggle room in,
Mhm. No.
unfortunately. Having been there, right? That we
Yeah.
just don't. And then you take them out of that and you place them in an environment where they can have the opportunity to thrive
Hmm.
because they have the direct nurturing of the parent as well as the education. Because
That's
this is
right.
where um, the distance is created, right? Parents aren't involved in their children's education. Again, being a piano pedagogue, uh, my wife, I see how the students progress. The students who are supported by their parents at home and made to practice, which is, you're not going to get, who's say, the mastery of an art. It takes at least 10,000 hours,
Yeah.
right? So those parents who support the kids in however they support them at home, whether they're, cajoling them or forcing them or just encouraging them to practice with the discipline to do so. There's the factor, discipline, right? When they practice, they perform well. We just had a recital last weekend that was a demonstration of that. The kids who practiced performed well. The kids who didn't,
Well,
right?
and I think it goes back to what you were talking about earlier, right? It's like if you can align get yourself aligned with your passion, no matter how old you are, whether you're 5 years old or you're 100 years old, then you can take aligned action. And if
Right.
you want to be great at football or piano or guitar or drums or whatever,
Hmm.
first you have to know that that's your passion. And if that's your passion, then you're going to want to take aligned action, and nobody's going to have to control you or force you to do any of those things. Now, I believe parents need to teach by their own behaviors, by how kids should, not should, that's a bad word, how kids can,
Align.
yeah, align with their passions and take aligned actions, right? By you doing that yourself and showing up every day
Sure.
and doing those things, right? So if
Right.
you're
And
constant,
kids listen to words and look at
yes,
actions, and if the two don't mix or match, then they shut off.
yeah, that's right. And that you can't control your kid. I don't care what you want to believe or not. There's no controlling anybody. You might be able to control them until they're 14, 15, 16 years old, but I'm guaranteeing you're not going to be able to control them as they get older. So teach them instead by your own actions on how to live life to the fullest by good with good values and taking that action to enjoy life in whatever way you want to,
Mm-hmm.
and finding something that's going to light you up. Make sure you have some hobbies, find something that really just gets you into that flow state. It's just to do these things that will add to the good of our world, and do it in a loving way.
Absolutely.
My kid, I'll give you an example. I'm not a huge sports fan, okay? My younger son and my ex-husband love sports. They're going to the playoffs. My younger son's sports team's going to the playoffs, and they may make it to the Super Bowl, okay? And so I was telling my older son, I'm like, "Oh, we're in the playoffs. Now we have to have, more football practice, and it's going to interfere with baseball practice." And me and my son were on our way to yoga, and he's like, "Mom, you're not doing what what are you're going down this negative spiral. You're doing what you tell us not to do." He's like, "Look on the bright side. It's still nice outside. It could be 20 degrees." He's like, he's going to get a lot of more exercise than he normally would. He gets to be with his friends. And I'm like, wow, my kid just took me out of my negative spiral. But it was eye-opening because I was like, okay, at least I know I'm doing the right thing, teaching the right things, and now he's helping me,
Right.
you know, change my perspective.
Perspective change is always great. Flow state. You mentioned that earlier. What is that?
Well, I always say it's, when you're working on something like writing or doing something crafty, or maybe even in a job that you just absolutely love, and you started at 9 in the morning and you look down and it's 5 o'clock at night and you haven't eaten or, gotten up, or all of a sudden you just lost track of all space and time. That's flow state. And if
That's
anybody's
where,
been
like
lucky,
Nepi and Close say, there's a theory of everything model that I found fascinating because it validated an experience I had back in 1989. Similar, it's kind of like a hypnosis guided journey.
mhm,
You might even be familiar with the guy's name is William Swigard, and
yeah.
he developed these techniques in the 1950s, multi-plane awareness and multi-level awareness. And they're guided sessions that you do some very interesting things with. Um, so one of the multiplane is designed so that you, in your light body, for those of you who don't understand what that is, it's this etheric body that we have that doesn't necessarily, it's around us, it's part of us, but we can separate from it and project our consciousness into it and use it to travel with. And so this scenario uses the light body to go through 9 planes of consciousness and integrate your body on each of those planes. As we condense into form, because we're cosmic consciousness condensed into form, just unaware. So these are the bandwidth levels of that condensation that's available to the human experience. It doesn't mean there's not more. That just means that's our combined bandwidth of experiential capacity. Now, Nepi and Close, a couple a doctor and a quantum scientist, came up with this triadic dimensional distinction vortical paradigm that they published in 2010. And it says consciousness, space, and time are tethered across 9 dimensions. So here's the math and science that validate this actual experience. So it's no longer just imaginary, right? Because those kinds of things where you're like, was that true? Did I really experience that? Well, yeah, if you experience something, it's true
Hmm.
for you,
Hmm.
right? If it can be true for others, then there's better validity and more acceptability of the potential of it, right? So once this corroboratory, here's the math and science, here's the, it's wonderful to be able to have those kinds of synchronicities. Now, it took 28 years or 30 years for that to appear,
Hmm.
right? They wrote the paper in 2010. I had the experience in 89. I found out about it in 2018. So those kinds of things give evidence to the nonlinearity
Hmm.
of the experiences that we have. Have you had something similar to that that you could relate to?
I mean, I'll try to relate it to somebody to kind of everyday life for people.
Hmm. Well, that's where it got
So
to boil down to. I realized what I just said was like, holy shit, they just blew a lot of minds. Well, how do you bring that back into a direct experience that's applicable on a daily basis?
so in hypnosis, we teach that you don't remember you don't you don't actually remember memories, you remember feelings.
Mm,
And if you go back to what you're talking about, like nothing's linear, then we have to understand that we're just living in our present reality. And when we remember things, we're remembering a feeling. And that feeling could be happening now and we're reliving
sure.
it in the
Well, it's a
present,
stored
right?
file. It's a stored file in the quantum computer that's vibrationally related.
Yes. And so that to me aligns more like, oh, if I'm remembering something, am I reliving it or no, I'm just refeeling it from a
Hmm.
quantum perspective. And
Right.
I didn't understand that. And so it doesn't, and this is going to sound a little crazy, but I'm going to say it anyways. I always had a hard time remembering things. And I was like, why is everybody always talking about the past? Right. Because I'm living like for the future and thinking about all these other things that could be
Sure.
happening. And they're always talking about the past and all this stuff that happened.
Dragging
Well,
baggage instead of getting on the flight.
exactly, exactly. And so if you think about it from that perspective, everything's happening at different times. It's not linear. Yeah, we grow up and we have these light bodies like you're talking about. I call them meat suits. We're when we're
Well,
born.
that's the difference. That the meat suit's the one that we have the physical experience in. The light body is the one that allows us to have the spiritual experience.
Okay, and when we're what I know is when we are born, our light bodies are already at the size that we are now or bigger or whatever, and we are just growing into the size that we're in right now, right? And
Hmm.
so it goes back to I'm just aligning what you were talking about where there's kind of like this space and time is irrelevant. We're having experiences every moment and it's not, hey, we had this experience, somebody put a timeline together, somebody put a clock together, and so and then we start to, because we believe that we're going to get older and this is how we live, this is how we're living because it's
Hmm.
all mental. So I could believe, and there could be a time and space where we don't age and we all stay at 21 and maybe we come out at 21 and that's what we look like. I don't know, but that's if we all believed that, that would happen.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That would be an interesting new configuration of the physical world now, wouldn't it? To be
Yeah.
able to accomplish that. Although it's similar, it would seem that being able, I love that there's a video, and I can't remember the name of it. It's about Tesla's 369 um, configuration. There's some math and science in it. But there's also an example of the electromagnetic field around a human body. And in the short video clip that speaks to it, it starts with that point of light in the center, right? So we've got this, what's called a torus around us that's
Yes.
bidirectional,
Mm-hmm.
right? And this energy is constantly flowing. It's a sphere
Mm-hmm.
ultimately that's around us, kind of like the Earth's magnetic field. We have the same for each of us. So it starts from that point of light that is the center. So each of us in our, it seems to be anyway, in our true form, and this is just my experience, you don't have to believe it, in that experience of cosmic consciousness, we're all points of light.
Mm-hmm.
And we vacillate on the different dimensions that we choose to inhabit or are aware that we can. And then from there, we create this physical body, which is made up of Mother Earth, right? So it's not just a phrase that we are the children of the earth. We actually are. Our entire physicality comes from our planet
Mm-hmm.
and the things on it.
Yep.
We've missed that for some reason.
Well, and I mean, I talked about this in another podcast, but I believe that this is really weird. I'm going to say it anyways. AI is going to help us understand that because it's going to
Already is.
get us off our asses and back into nature and realize that we are all part of this earth and we are all part of Mother Earth, and we will be I was doing some research about some of the one of the companies that you were working together. It was a textile and a clothing company or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
that they make 100% recycled clothing that you, and so you wear it, you give it back and it recycles back. I believe that what you're doing with companies like that is the way of the future,
It's
and it will,
responsible.
yes, responsible, and we're
Yeah,
as an AI is going to give us the ability to quickly come up with more of those like creative
sure.
ideas, and
Right, because it is,
people,
in AI, we think of it as artificial intelligence. It's not, it's aggregated, right? This is all human intelligence that is just querying. Now, the thing about what I find fascinating, and I totally agree with you, it is catapulting our ability to ascend into this
mhm,
new normal much better. How it's doing that, it's two-phased, right? It also, the term recursive function, right? So in a large language model, which is what AI is, it queries itself for problem solving.
mhm.
That's the recursive function. That's what it's called. And what do we do?
We do the same thing.
So how do we learn to dissolve into nothingness, right? Because this is what the recursive function does. It asks a question, it dissolves all possibilities, and then reemerges with what it can find actually answers the question, right?
Mhm.
Effectively. So
Yep.
we do the same thing, only we circumvent the recursive function in ourselves and the answers that emerge by not using the process appropriately. We think we know the answer, and so we will supplant our answers instead. Now, the
Mhm.
Native Americans and indigenous folks globally, they have a process, and I forget where this originally came from. It's called the three brain system: gut, heart, head. And the processing order is in that way. First brain is the gut. Now we know scientifically it's got neurosensors at the yin yang, right?
Yep.
The heart is where we distill it and decide whether it's desirable or undesirable. Then we feed it to the quantum computer sitting on top of our shoulders that's connected to everything to get the better answers. Now, and it's amazing the shift that happens in individuals when they begin at least exploring that. Because it's really hard to shut your thinking off, right? We get
Mhm.
70,000 thoughts a day, according to the neuroscientists.
Yep.
And most of them are self-deprecating. I would almost guarantee it.
Yeah, I mean, yes, because you talk about, everybody says, oh, do affirmation statements. I am wealthy.
Yeah, why do you think that?
Right. So, but a lot of times that doesn't work. I see that in a lot of my clients, right? Because their little thoughts in their head, their other 70,000 thoughts are saying, well, you're not healthy because your fat ass ate a pizza yesterday. And,
Exactly.
you know, and
Right.
that the affirmations don't work. And so if you start asking yourself, assume the wish is already fulfilled and start asking yourself why or what questions, then you start to begin to think and act like what you are, what
Or
you're.
instead of asking for what you don't have, be grateful for what you do
Yeah.
and start there.
And I think a lot of people have a hard time with even that. You know, everybody knows, oh, I need to be grateful. I need to be grateful. But it's actually like picking a few things. I
Well,
had
you
these,
don't want to be grateful for the challenges you face because they aggravate, frustrate, anger you, and yet that's the only place you grow.
right. It is. It is. Yep. And so
Well,
it's,
most of the time. I mean, when you're thinking about stuff, forward-thinking people like you, right? You've already expressed that you look ahead, right? You're asking questions about how you can show up better to facilitate the future.
mhm.
That's a different place than carrying the baggage, trying to bring it onto a flight that there's not even any carry-ons.
Yep. That's right. And I can't stress enough to the listeners how important it is to really put the baggage down in any way, any modality that you can find. For me, it was hypnosis. That's why I got certified in it, to quiet the noise so that
Hmm.
you can accelerate your life and the life of all of those around you. And
Absolutely.
that's where I break people's trances, I interrupt their trances, and I help them get back on track. You know, that's the best way I can put it. What is back on track?
Pattern disruption. That's all. That's what you need to do, right?
Yep. And get out of the, my life's miserable. I can't do this. I don't, you know what? There's always something, like you said, to be thankful for. What even it could be to be thankful for your miserable life. And I know that sounds crazy, but turn it around somehow.
That just seeing it that way will turn it around because you've made a choice to see it differently.
Yep.
Now, how perfect segue because we're coming up on closing time. Another song, um, musical background.
I like that song.
I do too, and especially my wife's pianist and I'm a progressive drummer, and so we're both percussionists. We like to beat on stuff. Hopefully it's not each other, right?
Right.
It isn't. So how would you offer, what advice, simple advice that you could give to others that could begin to help them? One of the things I share is just simply putting your fingertips together and focusing on your breathing and just feel your heartbeat in them. Right? When you can feel your heartbeat in your fingertips, you're officially out of your head. So then you're in
Yep.
that quiet space. And when you can enter that with an intention of seeking an answer, magic happens. So what kind of suggestions do you offer um, or give to others to find those places and be more coherent in their own lives?
I mean, the number one thing is that whenever somebody starts going down a path that, you know, their life is bad or terrible or these bad things keep happening, I always say just take a moment to really breathe in deeply and feel the love within yourself and say, I love myself so much. I am worthy of making different choices. And then when they find themselves, because a lot of people that I work with have really bad anxiety, whether it's
Hmm.
they're walking into the boardroom and they feel like they, you know, are going to say something stupid, or they're going onto a flight and they're having severe anxiety or whatever. Um, one of the first techniques that I teach them is the bilateral stimulation. Have you ever heard of this?
I've heard. Please explain.
So it's when you basically move something between both sides of your body. And it could be simply your hands, like you're just kind of rubbing each side of yourself, you know, you're crossing your arms together, or you're
Giving
literally,
yourself a hug.
Yeah, or you're literally taking a pen underneath a desk and moving it between each side and really thinking about what you're doing and breathing while you're doing it. And a lot of times I'll tell my clients that to repeat, it's not me, it's my brain. It's not me, it's my brain. And they can slowly come out of whatever anxiety that they're dealing with. Those are just a few little tips that I could give.
Sure. That's awesome. And of course, in that process, if you look around, there's no danger. So why do you
Right.
attempt it, right? It's all made up shit in your head, for the
Yep.
most part. Now, granted, there are some uh, things where you're in precarious situations. You do need to have a little, concern because it does warrant a bit of fear. Uh,
Yeah. But 99% of what you
Absolutely.
think does not come true ever.
Right.
And so
Absolutely.
it's understanding that those thoughts, those 70,000 thoughts we think a day, none of them are coming true except for the ones that we put a lot of energy into. And
Right.
those are all the ones that come true.
Yeah. Do you feel like it's all about where we choose to put the focus of our attention
Hmm.
with
Yes.
intention and follow it up with interaction?
Hmm. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. It's not the law of, what is it? The Secret talked about the law of attraction, and a lot of the times people felt like, oh yeah, I'll sit and meditate and draw everything to me. Well, that's the first step. If you forget about the taking a step
Yeah,
toward it,
that's
then it really doesn't work.
well, and it's also the feelings, because if you're telling you're sitting there meditating and attract, say you're dreaming of attracting your $5 million or whatever it is, it's just not going to be there unless you live your life like you have that $5 million already and the
Right.
wish is already fulfilled. So
Yeah.
there's just so much that goes into it. That's why I'm a big advocate of understanding the 13 laws of the universe. I'm kind of making that all up, but there's books out there for the 12 laws of the universe. But
Yeah.
I really think until you understand mentalism, you're not going to understand any of the other ones. And law of attraction comes last.
Right. Right. There's an old book I found. You just reminded me of it. Um, Feelings, right? Connecting with that kind of thing we were talking about earlier. God, this has been 40 years ago. I was walking through an old mercado here in town that was vacant. It had been for probably 2 decades at least. And I walked into this, and I'm walking through it thinking, oh, there's a gift here. And I find a rose quartz. I'm thinking, oh, thank you. That's really cool. That wasn't the gift. That was only a parcel. It was a heart-centered one, rose quartz, right? Led me into this little building that had a stack of books piled up in it, just piled. And I see this one book and I'm attracted to, and it's small, about like this. And the title of it is Seership. And it talks about psychism and the very things that you're talking about, that 13th law, right? You know when it was written? 18,
Probably.
1898.
I was going to say a long time ago. So we've
I
been,
still have it. And so, reading through it, it said the same thing.
well, yeah, and that's the thing. So we have to stop. So a lot of times I'll also talk to my patients and my clients about stop, be mindful of what you're taking in, right? So take in the the positive things and and stop with the negative things. So the mainstream news, mainstream media, just turn it off.
Well, yeah.
Make
Well,
it
even
not
when you
part of your
start to
work.
say a terse word, hit the pause button. Breathe. Okay, what can I say that contributes
Mm-hmm.
rather than detracts?
Yep. And the more you practice that, the easier it becomes.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, and for some it may be really hard to practice because you've built your life around your negative self-image.
Yeah, that's right. And that's when I encourage people to go out to coaches like you, and there's tons of other coaches
Hmm.
I can help where, you need a teacher and a coach to
Yeah.
talk to. And when
Absolutely.
you have, you're always, life is all about waves, and you're always going to have that yeah, that roller coaster that you're on. And when you have, people around you that you can bounce ideas off, that are safe, that are positive, it makes life easier to elevate your consciousness.
Absolutely. Christina, this has just been an absolutely wonderful conversation, and I say that and spell it with an O. Uh, you know, so wonderful, because we're talking about the one in each of us, right? That reflects that deep understanding, connectivity, and ability to transcend and live in harmony with each other.
Hmm.
So, conversation is impeccable for that. Thank you.
Thank you for spending the time with me. I appreciate it. I've learned a lot today.
I didn't spend a moment, I shared it.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. And namaste and in-law catch. And
Namaste.
thanks for sticking with us for this episode of One World in a New World. I'm your host, Zen Benefiel, and for Christina Olsen and myself, thank you so much. And one last thing, make sure, subscribe, comment, share, be part of the solution, not outside of it. Value your own contribution, capacity, and make it. Great. Thanks so much again. Visit planetarycitizens.net and download your free book there. And I will see you next time.
Do you ever feel like you're in your 40 days and nights in the desert? Well, many do. There's too much frustration, pain, and suffering in the world today. And I help people through that to find joy and happiness in their lives, to create action plans, and find a way to achieve their goals. I've done that with many. If my reputation online is anything like I show up in person, you've got a great score here.